Hey folks, David Stewart here. So there's been a little rumor going around regarding the Disney Star Wars sequels that they're going to retcon them out of existence, that they're going to get rid of the sequel trilogy. And in this case, for this rumor, that they're going to use some sort of alternate timeline, they're going to use time travel or something to erase the badness of the sequels and kind of redo them. This rumor pops up every so often. I have something a little bit different to say about it if you just bear with me as I first point out that I've seen this rumor before. We're going to see it again. For almost 10 years now, there's been a huge amount of content turnover with a bunch of different YouTube channels trying to get people's interest piqued about Disney finally having some negative consequence for making the sequel trilogy, or the people who made it finally suffering some negative consequence for making those bad movies. There's been rumors that Kathleen Kennedy will be fired for almost 10 years now. Now, I was on the original Force Awakens hate train. Most of this only really started after The Last Jedi. That was the movie that really pissed the fans off. And so right away, it's Kathleen Kennedy's getting fired because of how bad this movie was. And I said, get woke, go broke. That's pure cope. She will retire on her own terms. She will be remembered as the person who made billions of dollars making Star Wars movies. She's not going to get fired. And that's exactly how things panned out. And I think it's not to say that they will never retcon the sequels. I think it's almost inevitable that they will, not because they're bad, but because there's just no creativity, and the Hollywood system just can't come up with new ideas. And any kind of franchise that goes on long enough is destined to have continuity issues. I mean, Star Wars actually has had continuity issues really since the prequels. The prequels have continuity issues with the original trilogy, if you dare to look hard enough. And so I think it's inevitable that there be some kind of retcon, or they could just remake the original trilogy. In fact, I'm really surprised that they haven't remade the original trilogy other than what the sequels were, which is kind of requels, which is a term a viewer came up with. They're like remake sequels. But no, there's not really going to be a big negative consequence to making the sequels. I think most of the shows and things are trying to roughly keep in an area of there being some kind of continuity. You retcon things as you feel like and as you're going along, and that's been the standard for Star Trek and pretty much every show that's had a really long run, or any franchise that's had a really long run. It's certainly been the case with things like, Marvel superheroes, DC superheroes. They retcon things. They come up with, new universes and alternate timelines. And, if anyone remembers that, like Spider-Man clone saga mess that from the 90s, this kind of stuff happens all the time. And yes, it's bad, but it's not because they're not doing this because there's been some negative feedback from the market. They'll do it because they just don't really have a lot of ideas. Now, my bigger point here is, why do fans care about this so much? Why do they want the sequels to be retconned? Why do they want the sequels to be erased? Why do we want to pretend that they didn't exist? And I totally think, if Disney wanted to, they could just make a new episode 7, 8, 9. They could do anything they want to. But what fans want is they want continuity, and they want this idea of canon. And this is an idea that I think is honestly kind of silly, and is to my point that I've made for a long time, that you spiritually can't sever the art and the artist. The art and the artist are bound together, and attempting to make them into two separate things, you can do it legally, right? Like George Lucas sold Star Wars, and a bunch of other people have made Star Wars fan fiction since then, and you've seen the results of that. But spiritually, that bond isn't severed. Really, when George Lucas was in charge, whatever he said was canon, that was canon. And that was really important. And now it's just an amalgam mush of whoever's in charge, maybe deciding this and retconning that. We saw this with comics. Like, once you had no continuous editor-in-chief at Marvel, once you lost Stan Lee or Jim Shooter, then like the continuity just fell apart. The interconnectedness of that stuff started to get really hazy and very helter-skelter. I expect to see more of that issue with Star Wars as things go on. But fans want a canon. They want it to be like a Bible, and that's because they view the galaxy far, far away as a real place full of real people doing real things. The stories feel real, and they want them to feel real, and they want them to feel like a unified whole. I think that this is not the best way to view any franchise, but especially franchises that are not derived from a single creator's mind and their will and their, overseeing something. I think it's just not a healthy and productive way to view things. Instead, the better way to view Star Wars as a franchise is that it's a loose assemblage of all the things that you think of as being Star Wars. And you can enjoy them or not enjoy them. Like Knights of the Old Republic, very beloved game. One of my favorite Star Wars games, and really probably one of my favorite RPGs of all time is Knights of the Old Republic. That is basically fan fiction. It's set 2,000 years in the past. It's a great way to do new Star Wars, and I wish that they would do that because it takes the core of what people really love of Star Wars. It's in the galaxy. There's the Force. There's Jedi. There's Sith. There's spaceships and planets and weird aliens, and some of the aliens you're familiar with. There's blasters, all the things, and the aesthetics too. All the things that make Star Wars are there in KOTOR. So if we're looking to distill like what makes a Star Wars movie feel like a Star Wars movie, it would be in that video game, Knights of the Old Republic. So the better way for them to go forward would be to just do things like that. And I think the fans would be really pleased. Then you're not bound to have to what does Rey do in this thing? We can't have another sequel. What are we going to do with Rey? What are we going to do with Luke? What are we going to do with all these characters? And did we do them wrong? Or, you just don't have to worry about that. You make new characters basically in the same setting. The setting can be used infinitely in that way. You can just tell more stories using the same building blocks that fans really appreciate. They like the canon because it makes it feel like a real thing. But it's probably healthier to view it as like a rough assemblage of things that you can use to tell stories. Honestly, really how Star Trek ended up as time went on. Continuity became a little bit more difficult. And so it's better to view Star Trek as like this idea about going out and searching the galaxy for new life and having those sorts of adventures. That's probably a better way to think of this sort of thing. Because if you're not dealing with something like, from one creator, Lord of the Rings or something is written by J.R.R. Tolkien, or, Game of Thrones is written by George R.R. Martin. Like, there's one creator that kind of rules it all. It's better to just view it as kind of a rough area. Mario is probably a better example of how we should view a franchise or Zelda is probably an even better example. Like Nintendo knows how to run its franchises. Every game's kind of a new take on what they're doing, and people aren't really expecting a whole lot of continuity except the nerds who are trying to get the super deep lore on what the Zelda timeline is. It's really not about the timeline. It's about using those core elements to tell a new story. And I guess that's my big point there. So people like it, and it also goes to my point about people viewing Star Wars as a religion, particularly my generation, those of us born, let's say, from in the 70s and 80s in particular. We viewed Star Wars and franchises almost religiously. There's a religious attachment. So they need to be like a Bible. You want them to be a Bible, and you want them to be coherent like a Bible because they feel real like a Bible, and they feel important like a Bible, and there's an attachment that's almost religious in nature. And when you dig down and you spend some time with the real fanatics, not just the people who like to watch Star Wars or buy some toys, but the people who really read every little thing. And, keep in mind, Disney already retconned stuff with the Legends, right? They took the EU and they're like, none of that counts. And people were upset about that, but they got over it. And my sense with there is that because of that religious attachment, it actually didn't matter how bad the sequels were. There was a whole bunch of people that were going to see them no matter what, even if they hated them. There's a whole bunch of people that continue to just watch Star Wars shows, even though they haven't really liked them. They don't like what Disney does with the franchise. They still watch it because they're so deeply attached to it that it's actually more painful to let go of that attachment than it is to just watch a mediocre TV show. Right. Most of the Star Wars shows are probably bad to mediocre. I stopped watching them quite a while ago when I felt like it just wasn't worth my time to watch them, and I wasn't going to really make a lot of money reviewing them online. So yeah, just no reason to really watch them. But I wanted to make this video because this rumor pops up every so often. They're going to get rid of these people and do this, and Dave Filoni is going to save the franchise, and then it's not going to get saved. It's just going to continue being a milked corporate franchise for a long time. And some things will get retconned, some things won't. You can expect that because that's the standard way that things have been going for 50 or 60 years. And just don't take it too seriously would be my advice. Just view it as like, there might be a good Star Wars thing that comes out, and if it is, you can enjoy it, and that's cool. And if it's not, you can just pass and don't watch it, and don't need to interact with it. Just worry about whatever next interesting story they might be able to concoct with the franchise. So anyway, leave your thoughts down below. Love to read them, and I'll check you all next time. Have a great day.